the farmer who left his entire inheritance to a stranger. They called him the eccentric old man. They ignored his wisdom, laughed at his silence. But after his death, letters, videos, and a surprising will astonished everyone. What seemed like a farewell became a new beginning, and his final lesson blossomed throughout the town. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, like and subscribe so we can continue creating stories like this one. The sun had not yet risen over the hills of Golden Ridge, a small town in rural Kentucky, when old Jack Wilson was already walking among the coffee plants on his property. At 83 years old, he maintained the same routine he had cultivated for more than 5 decades, waking before dawn, putting on his worn leather boots, placing his tattered straw hat on his head, and making his first rounds of the farm. It was as if the land called to him, a silent conversation that only he understood. The Blue Haven farm, as it was known, seemed modest to inattentive eyes. The simple wood and brick house, painted a faded blue, the small corral where a few dairy cows lazily ruminated, the chicken coop that always provided fresh eggs. What few knew was that this apparent simplicity hid an empire built with patience, intelligence, and discretion. "Good morning, Mr. Wilson." "Already up at this hour?" greeted Mrs. Betty, the only employee the old man allowed to work in the house, taking care of cleaning and meals. "The day starts early for those who respect the land, Betty. Is the coffee ready?" Mrs. Betty smiled. She had known this man for more than 20 years and had never seen him change his habits. Even when his body began to complain with small aches, even when doctors suggested more rest, Jack Wilson remained faithful to his daily ritual. In town, opinions about the old farmer were divided. For some, he was just a stubborn eccentric who refused to accept the passage of time. For others, a miser who lived like a poor man to avoid spending what he had. Few understood what was really going on in that meticulous mind. "Uncle Jack isn't right in the head," Richard, a nephew who appeared every 6 months for lightning visits, frequently commented. "He still writes letters when he could use a cell phone, keeps money at home when he could invest in better funds, and talks to plants as if they were people." What Richard and the other nephews didn't know was that, behind that apparent simplicity, Jack had built a small empire. Over the years, he bought lands from indebted neighbors at ridiculous prices, invested in safe investments with the help of a single trusted accountant, and diversified his production when everyone else was betting only on coffee. The only one who seemed to really care about Jack, besides Mrs. Betty, was a stranger who began appearing on the property about 6 years ago, a middle-aged man with severe features but a gentle gaze. At first, the visit caused strangeness in the small community. "Is Mr. Wilson now receiving ex-convicts? The world is truly lost," whispered the sharp tongues in the church square after Sunday Mass. But Jack never cared about others' opinions. He saw beyond appearances. The man who went by the name of Mark Thompson came punctually once a month. He brought books. They talked for hours on the porch, sometimes walked around the property while Jack explained details about cultivating the land. "You are the only person who received me without judgment after my release," Mark confided once, when he had developed enough trust to talk about his past. "The land does not judge a man by what he was, Mark, but by what his hands are capable of creating today," replied Jack, with the simple wisdom that characterized his speech. Time passed, and that unusual friendship strengthened. Jack financed technical courses in agronomy for Mark, helped him buy a small neighboring property, and most importantly, gave him something money can't buy: dignity. On that cool autumn morning, as Jack finished his coffee on the porch, he felt a slight dizziness. Nothing serious, he thought, just the natural fatigue of age. He sat in his favorite rocking chair, watching the sunrise that tinged his property golden. Birds began their morning symphony. The gentle breeze brought the smell of moist earth and coffee. And so, contemplating the work of his life, Jack Wilson closed his eyes for the last time. The news spread quickly through Little Golden Ridge. A crowd attended the wake, more out of curiosity than genuine affection. The nephews, who rarely appeared, now made no attempt to hide their anxiety. They gathered in small groups, speaking in low voices about the possible inheritance. "I'll finally renovate my house in the city," said Sandra, a niece who only appeared at birthdays and even then when it suited her. He had a mattress stuffed with money, I'm sure, commented Peter, another nephew who for years had been trying to convince his uncle to sell part of the land. That old man must have been senile in recent years. He talked to himself, wrote things in notebooks he kept in the chicken coop. I hope this doesn't complicate the division, whispered Teresa, one of the few nieces who at least called it Christmas. The only one who seemed genuinely distraught was Mark, who remained in a corner silent with red eyes. No one approached him. After all, what could an ex-convict want there except some advantage? 2 days after the burial, everyone was summoned to the town's only notary office. Dr. Morgan, a respected lawyer in the region and Jack's trusted friend, had requested the presence of all potential heirs for the reading of the will. The small room was packed. Nephews, distant cousins whom no one recognized, Mrs. Betty, and to the surprise and discomfort of many, Mark. The clock struck exactly 10 in the morning when Dr. Morgan adjusted his glasses, cleared his throat, and began to open the sealed envelope containing Jack Wilson's last wishes. The silence in the room was absolute. Outside, life continued its course in the quiet Golden Ridge. Inside, lives were about to be transformed in ways no one could imagine. Before we begin, I would like to inform you that Mr. Jack Wilson left specific instructions about how this moment should happen, announced Dr. Morgan, adjusting his reading glasses while organizing the documents on the dark wooden desk. A murmur ran through the cramped notary office. Teresa, one of the nieces, couldn't disguise a small smile at the corner of her mouth. She had always been the favorite, or at least that's what she told all the relatives. The semi-annual visit she made to her uncle, always carrying some sweet or souvenir, would certainly have been enough to guarantee a generous slice of the inheritance. First, continued the lawyer, Jack left the main house of Blue Haven Farm to Mrs. Betty, in recognition of the 20 years of service provided with dedication and loyalty. The expression of shock was immediate. Mrs. Betty, sitting in a corner of the room with her hands trembling on her lap, couldn't contain her tears. The nephews exchanged indignant looks. "This is absurd," protested Richard, standing up. "A housekeeper receiving the main house? There must be some mistake." Dr. Morgan remained impassive, as if he already expected this reaction. "There is no mistake, Mr. Richard. The document is duly registered and recognized. Your uncle specified that Mrs. Betty was more family in the last 20 years than many who carry the Wilson surname." The tension was palpable. Sandra, another niece, sniffled loudly but remained silent. Dr. Morgan continued. "The pickup truck and fishing equipment were left to Mr. Joseph Parker, a longtime fishing companion. A simple man at the back of the room nodded, visibly moved. The nephews hardly knew that this humble-looking gentleman had been the one who accompanied Jack in his moments of solitude, when the entire family was too busy with their lives in the city. "And now," said the lawyer, making a significant pause, "we come to the main part of the estate." Everyone adjusted themselves in the chairs. This is what really mattered: the lands, the investments, the saved money. Some were already making mental calculations, others planning how they would spend their share. According to Jack Wilson's express determination, 92% of all his assets, including farms, urban properties and financial investments, are left to Mr. Mark Thompson. A sepulchral silence took over the room, quickly replaced by exclamations of indignation. Mark, sitting in the most distant corner, remained motionless, his eyes fixed on the floor, as if not even he believed what he had just heard. "This is fraud," shouted Peter, the most explosive of the nephews. "This man must have manipulated our uncle in recent years. Everyone knows the old man was losing his lucidity." Dr. Morgan raised his hand, asking for silence. Mr. Wilson anticipated this reaction, and therefore left not only a written will, but also a video recorded just 3 months ago, in full mental capacity, as attested by me and by 2 doctors who signed a certificate of sanity. The lawyer turned on a small projector. On the white wall of the notary office, the image of Jack Wilson appeared, sitting in his rocking chair on the porch. Despite his advanced age, His eyes shone with lucidity and determination. "If you are watching this video, it's because I am no longer among you," he began, with a firm voice. "I know that many will be surprised, perhaps even outraged by my decisions, but I want you to understand that these are not decisions made in the heat of the moment or by an old man's whim. They are the result of a lifetime of observations." Jack paused, took a sip of coffee, and continued. "Mark Thompson entered my life when all of you had already left it. Not by my choice, but by yours. While my relatives appeared only when they needed money or on rare commemorative dates, Mark came regularly. Not to ask, but to learn, to talk, to share." In the notary office, the discomfort was visible on the faces of the family. "I met Mark through a rehabilitation program for inmates in the region. He had served time for a mistake made in his youth and was trying to rebuild his life. When everyone closed doors, I decided to open one, and I discovered a man of integrity, hard-working and loyal." The nephews looked at each other, incredulous. Teresa began to sob, more from anger than sadness. "Over the past 6 years, I watched Mark study agronomy with resources I provided, apply the knowledge in practice, transform abandoned land into productive land. I saw in him the same passion for agriculture that I always cultivated, and more importantly, I saw in him the gratitude and respect that many of my own blood never showed." The video continued, but Peter, unable to bear any more, abruptly stood up. "This is a farce. Our uncle was senile. We will contest this will." Dr. Morgan paused the video and, without altering his professional tone, replied, "Mr. Wilson also anticipated this possibility and made it clear that if the will is contested, all assets will be fully donated to the New Beginning Foundation, an institution for the rehabilitation of ex-inmates that he himself secretly founded 3 years ago. The documentation is already prepared and will be automatically activated in case of judicial dispute." The revelation fell like a bomb. It was the checkmate of a man who, even after departing, remained a few steps ahead of everyone. "Additionally," continued the lawyer, removing a folder from his briefcase, "Jack left individual letters for each of the main family members. One by one, the letters were delivered. The mood in the room changed as each recipient read their personalized message. There were tears, pale faces, trembling hands. The old farmer, apparently so simple and detached, had kept a meticulous record of each family member's actions over the past 10 years. For Teresa, the favorite niece, the letter mentioned the time she borrowed money with the excuse of medical problems, when in fact she was financing luxury trips. For Richard, there was a detailed account of attempts to convince him to sell valuable land at low prices to a friend in real estate development. For Sandra, the painful reminder of when she refused to shelter her uncle for 2 weeks during a home renovation, claiming lack of space while posting photos of the semi-empty house on social media. The last revelation came when Dr. Morgan informed that Mark would only receive the full inheritance if he fulfilled one condition: to remain in Golden Ridge for at least 1 year, supervising the reconstruction of the rural school where Jack had studied in childhood. It wasn't just a transfer of assets, but a mission. Mark finally raised his eyes. His face showed a mixture of gratitude and determination. "Mr. Wilson gave me a second chance when no one else believed in me," he said, breaking his silence. "The least I can do is honor his trust." As the relatives left the notary office with their heads down, Dr. Morgan approached Mark and handed him a small additional envelope. He asked that this be delivered only to you, in private, after the official reading. In the solitude of late afternoon, sitting on the same park bench where he used to meet Jack for conversations about life, Mark opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper written in the old farmer's firm handwriting. "Mark, true wealth is not in the lands or money I leave you, but in what you will do with them. Transform lives as yours was transformed. And remember, who plants with honesty, harvests with abundance. Your story is just beginning." 6 months had passed since the reading of the will that shook small Golden Ridge. Comments on the streets, in supermarket lines, and after Sunday. Masses were no longer as frequent, but they still persisted like embers of a fire that refuses to completely extinguish. Mark Thompson, previously viewed with suspicion, was now a central figure in the community. The reconstruction of the rural school had begun 3 weeks after the revelation of the will. Contrary to what many expected, he didn't hire a large contractor from the city. Instead, he gathered local workers, many of whom had been unemployed for months, and initiated a collaborative project that nourished not only the local economy, but also community pride. "Mr. Thompson, we found something while digging the foundation for the new library annex," said Tom, one of the construction workers, on a hot February afternoon. The object in question was an old wooden chest, protected by a waterproof tarp and buried almost 6 feet deep. When opened, it revealed a treasure that no one could have imagined: documents, photos, and meticulously organized notebooks that told a different story of Jack Wilson. "These are receipts, dozens of them," commented Mark, carefully leafing through the papers, "and none have his name as the donor. They're all signed as a friend of the community." Among the documents were payment receipts for surgeries for needy children, scholarships for young people from the region, interest-free loans for small farmers in difficulty, and even the anonymous purchase of the ambulance that had served the town for more than 15 years. "All. This time," murmured Mrs. Betty, who had been called to see the discovery, "and he never said a word about it to anyone." News of the chest's discovery spread quickly, as only happens in small towns. The image of the eccentric and miserly old man crumbled, replaced by that of a secret benefactor who had transformed countless lives without ever seeking recognition. Teresa, the niece who had shown the most indignation during the reading of the will, appeared at the school under construction one morning, her face marked by sleepless nights. "I want to talk to you," she said to Mark, who was supervising the window installation work. "In private, if possible." They walked to a bench under an old mango tree where the cool breeze provided relief from the scorching heat. "I've read and reread the letter my uncle left me," she began, her voice choked. "Every word is true. I saw him as an outdated old man with saved money when in fact he saw through all my lies." Mark just listened, respecting that difficult moment of self-confrontation. "When I heard about the chest, something inside me finally broke," continued Teresa. "I discovered that while I was lying about medical problems to finance my trips, he was anonymously paying for treatments for those who really needed them." Tears flowed freely down the woman's face, who no longer cared about appearing vulnerable. "I want to redeem myself, Mark. I know I can't change the past, but I want to help with the school, with the foundation, with whatever is necessary." That conversation marked the beginning of a transformation, not only in Teresa, but gradually in other family members who, confronted with the truth about their own actions and with evidence of Jack's secret generosity, began to review their lives and values. On a particularly significant afternoon, while documenting the progress of construction for the monthly report he sent to Dr. Morgan, Mark received an unexpected visit. An elderly lady leaning on an intricately carved wooden cane approached slowly, observing every detail of the work. "It's an honor to finally meet you, Mr. Thompson," she said, with a surprisingly firm voice for her 90-something years. "I'm Mrs. Anderson. I was Jack's first teacher at this same school more than 70 years ago." The revelation left Mark speechless. The elderly woman smiled, realizing the impact of her presence. "Jack was a brilliant boy, you know. He read everything he found, asked questions that often I myself didn't know how to answer. But when he wanted to continue his studies beyond the 4th grade, the family vehemently opposed. A man's place is in the field, not wasting time with books, they said. The teacher asked to sit down and continued her story while watching the workers. He never completely overcame that denial. He became self-taught, read in secret, kept newspaper clippings, and he promised himself that no one else would go through what he went through. That's why he always helped those who wanted to study, even when he didn't have much. That conversation was recorded and, with the teacher's permission, broadcast on the local radio. It was another piece of the puzzle that composed the true portrait of Jack Wilson. The following week, another event surprised the town. A group of young people led by Martha, a university student who had received an anonymous scholarship to study agricultural engineering, approached Mark with a proposal. "We discovered that we were all beneficiaries of the same friend of the community," explained Martha emotionally. "We want to create a mentoring program where each of us will help a younger student, creating a cycle of support as Mr. Wilson did for us." The Seeds of Tomorrow project, as it was named, quickly gained support from other anonymous beneficiaries of Jack, forming a network of solidarity that spread like the roots of a strong tree. 10 months after the reading of the will, the new Jack Wilson Rural School was inaugurated. It wasn't just a renovated building, but an educational complex with a library, computer lab, community garden, and a small cultural center. Mark had not only met the requirements of the will, but expanded the original vision. At the inauguration ceremony, the final surprise, Mark announced that half of all the inherited wealth would be allocated to the New Beginning Foundation to ensure the continuity of education, rehabilitation, and community development. Projects? "Mr. Wilson taught me that true wealth isn't in what we accumulate, but in what we share," he said before an emotional audience. "Today, we celebrate not just the inauguration of a school, but the birth of a new cycle in the history of Golden Ridge." Among those present was Sandra, who had returned to town after months of reflection. Beside her, Richard and other family members who initially revolted by the will now began to understand the true meaning of Jack's legacy. "I think Uncle got what he wanted after all," Sandra commented to her sister, observing the inauguration plaque. "He wasn't just distributing material goods, he was teaching us a lesson that no money can buy." A full year after Jack Wilson's departure, Golden Ridge was no longer the same. The small town, previously dormant in its rural routine, now bustled with new projects, community initiatives, and a renewed sense of belonging. Mark, who initially planned to fulfill only the minimum period required by the will, decided to establish himself permanently in the town. He bought a simple house near the school, and every morning before sunrise he walked through the property he had inherited, silently conversing with the land, exactly as his mentor had done. "You know, Mrs. Betty," he said one afternoon, as they drank coffee on the porch that was now hers, "sometimes I feel as if Mr. Wilson was still around watching everything." The lady smiled, serving another cup of the strong coffee that Jack so appreciated. "And he is, my boy, not in the buildings or the lands, but in every life he touched, in every seed he planted. Some seeds take longer to germinate, but when they finally sprout, they transform the entire landscape." That night, as the full moon illuminated the coffee, plantations that extended as far as the eye could see, Mark fully understood what the old farmer had written in that last letter. His story, the story of Golden Ridge and everyone there, was just beginning. And it would be written not with ink on paper, but with actions that would echo for generations. Jack Wilson's legacy, built in silence over decades, finally blossomed in the daylight, stronger and more beautiful than anyone could imagine. Dear listeners, we hope the story of old Jack and Mark has deeply touched your hearts. To continue this journey of emotions and reflections, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories about generosity, redemption, and second chances. Find it here by clicking on the left. If this narrative about the true meaning of wealth and legacy resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Daily, we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life and make us reflect on our own values. What lessons did you take from the story of Golden Ridge? Have you ever known someone like old Jack who practiced good deeds in silence? Share your experiences in the comments. We're eager to hear your own stories of transformation and generosity.